Okay, next item is a public hearing for consideration to consider the proposed changes to the classification of pay plan that was previously detailed in Circular number 196.
Good morning again. Commissioners, General Circular 196 was promulgated on January 29th, 2019. In that circular, it was a direct response to the request received from Louisiana State Police to establish a new career progression group for their specialized technical support officer, to create a series for technical support officer. As it existed, there was only one level of technical support officer, and the current incumbents of the position are all senior LSP staff. Therefore, there was a need for developing a series to allow for workforce succession planning, to recruit new individuals into that field and to offer promotional opportunities within that field to entice individuals to stay in that specialized technical service. After discussion and back and forth discussion with the command staff at State Police, we came up with a recommendation that is before you today in General Circular 196. It establishes 2 additional levels and then a supervisor level. So it establishes 3 classified titles in State Police service. And by doing so, will require your approval as well as the governor's approval prior to implementation. And we have it broken down into different exhibits in the circular. I have looked at the comparable job series in formulating a recommendation and in working with Louisiana State Police. We've made some modifications to minimum qualifications that were originally proposed. We reduced some of those to reduce the barriers to entry for the training level and for the supervisor level. In the end, I believe this is a sound recommendation. I believe the Commission, in my opinion, it would behoove the Commission to adopt the changes as proposed in the exhibits. And I believe Lieutenant Colonel White is here if there are any questions of the Commissioners about specifics or some technical details.
Well, I understand Mr. J.D., I think I got it right that time, Parker, and I would like to address the Commission on that matter.
Yes, sir.
Would you please come forward and identify yourself?
Yes, sir. J.D. Parker. I'm with the State Police, been with State Police 22 years. I'm in the technical support unit. I've been there.
Feel free if you would like to have a seat, or if you prefer to stand, either one is fine.
Just used to testifying in court.
There you go.
And when you first get up there, you...
Well, then raise your right hand.
Yes, sir. I've been in the unit since, officially, since 2012, and unofficially I've been TDY since 2009. So I've been around a while, and we have discussed this a little bit amongst the TSOs. There's only 6 of us in the state, or 5 of us, 6 on paper in the state, and currently we report to a lieutenant since there's no captain in our chain of command right now. So it's kind of the hierarchy of what we have. I personally am out of the Alexandria office and handle the top half of the state. So we have a wide coverage area. So what's officially being read, this is really the first official. I have had discussions with Mr. Hanneman, and he has emailed me some stuff of what's being proposed. And with the changes of the commission or his recommendations, I think we all, as TSOs, have a few items of heartburn with it and would like to address them. Mr. Hanneman had compared this to the emergency services, which that is one of the 4 specialized units we have. We have polygraphists, emergency services, pilots, and the technical support unit. The emergency service unit that he's comparing us to does have the ability to work overtime, federal overtime, checking trucks and stuff like that, whereas the other 3 do not have the ability. I provided a an email with some charts on it, and just to explain those kind of charts, give you a little visual. The first chart you can see is that's our workload from 2008 to 2017, and it's increased exponentially, and it's going to continue to increase how much technical support requests the state police get. The second chart is the pay comparison chart. That's the one with the black, green, and red. And when you look at those, that's basically showing the levels on the pay chart, the green being now where the technical support unit is, and the red being the proposed, and how it compares to these other specialized sections. And so this proposal is going to lower us down. Currently, a TSO is a P3, and with this recommendation that Mr. Hanneman and the command staff made, it brings the pay down to a P2 for a TSO. And a trainee, when you come in, gets no specialized, no pay bump, if you will. There's no incentive. Whereas now, when you come in, you are a P1, but you get a $250 stipend, premium pay they call it. So in essence, it's a P2, but you're not P2 on paper. So if you don't work out, you just go back to your old position. And I think there was intentions, because I did discuss this with Colonel White, and I think this was the intention of why they want to come in at a P1, and I agree with that, but give them a little incentive to get here, because we're trying to attract a younger trooper, and we're talking about a highly technical job. You know, we're telling you technical support, but what do? We do computer forensics, cell phone forensics, wiretaps, countermeasures, install cameras, audio devices, anything technical in surveillance, tracking, anything like that. There's 6 guys that handle that throughout the state. And it's over and over, it's just going up. I think this proposed change is going to reduce the interest in the unit and give us a smaller pool of applicants. We need to retain institutional knowledge in the technical support unit for us to be successful. And in doing this, they do it with specialty pay to attract you to come and keep you here, to retain you in the section. That's why we wanted the career progression. So it gives the guys an opportunity. You got to compare it to the civilian counterparts and other sections that perform, you know, special duties. This unit's often attracted, you know, we're often exposed to high stress, high profile cases. I promise you, if you see a state police case in the news, one of the 6 of us or one of the 5 of us right now was somehow involved in it. Whether we did a phone, we did camera, surveillance work, we did downloaded DVRs, something our unit had to do with. So how do I see this proposal? What they're proposing is, and my chart, I got to tell you, and I responded to it, I was wrong on the entry years on the technical support. They changed that from, initially they requested 5 years, and they've lowered it to 1, or of permanent status. And I think that's a great place to be, because that does give us the ability, if somebody comes on the job with some skills, they can come into the section. They got to be a permanent status, and they're saying they come in at a P1. Currently, like I said, we get a $250 stipend for that. When you compare it to the other specialty jobs, a polygraphist comes in at a P3, a pilot comes in at a P3, and emergency services comes in at a P1 for only 1 year. And then then you can move up after that 1 year in emergency services. The second level for us currently is after 1 year probation at P1 in specialty premium pay, you go to a P3. They're proposing that we stay at still trooper P1 pay for 2 years. Well, they want to compare it to, Mr. Hanneman said, to the emergency services. Their trainee only stays there 1 year. The two charts, the one that explains the pay, you would want that to be high, and the one with the years of service, you would want that to be low. It's kind of like buying a car. When you go buy a car, you want to, you don't want them to give you wholesale for your trade-in and you pay retail for the car. You want to get those two numbers together, and I think that's what we need to do, or the commission needs to do, is get those numbers together so it's fair and attractive to the young trooper to come to the position. The supervisor position that is being proposed is at a P4 level. A master pilot can be at a P5 in 4 years of being a pilot. He can be and has no supervisory skills. So we're going to have a pilot that has no supervisory skills and a supervisor in the technical support unit. Both units are comparable in size. They have, I think, 7 people and we're slotted for 6. Their guys are moving up quicker than our guys would. And then that brings us to the supervisory position. They have, y'all heard, I think it was just 2 months ago, they were here and got their pay structure or their positions in order, and now they have a command pilot, which I believe is at a P6. So if you're going to compare the units, let's compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, not just start moving everybody down. My thoughts are we shouldn't change the TSO, the base position, the TSO, from P3 to P2. That's all that's going to do is, without compensation, they're going to move on. They're either, if it's a young trooper, they're going to be so low on the pay scale that they could walk away from the job and go make $150,000 a year doing just one discipline that we do, and we do 5 of them.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Do y'all currently have any P3s that, if this were put into place, would be bumped down to a P2?
No, that, from my understanding, we
Because
would.
you said if this new chart went into place,
We would,
it would.
the P3s would be grandfathered in, as I understand it, and we would be senior TSOs.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
if
I don't
this
think-
went
I don't
into
think
place,
that-
that anybody would be knocked down or pay. Or something.
No, I don't think so, but I just, and my
Then I
concern is,
misunderstood when you first.
my concern is, is there a residual effect for JD? Would I catch a pay increase? Yes, I would. It would be a residual, but that's not my intention here. My intention is for what we're attracting. We've got our unit, whoever said it, a senior staff. I made 22 years last year. One of my partners made 22 years last year. All of us in 7 years, this unit's going to be totally different. It'll be all new guys. And so we want to attract those guys that are going to better this unit, bring it, stay at our level, and make it better. And try to leave the place a little better than we got. There are training requirements. I do agree with the training requirements. I just don't agree with the pay and the time. If we're gonna create a long time in between positions, then let's bump the pay up. If it's gonna be a lower pay, then lower those times in between positions. I just don't think we're gonna attract what we need to attract. To downgrade the unit now is only gonna set it back, and it's gonna end up costing the state police more money in the long run. I would just like to thank y'all for allowing me to speak, and if y'all have any questions.
One other question. When you said that as far as recruitment now, what are the basic salaries for those kind of disciplines out there that you're talking about if they were in the civilian?
In the civilian world, somebody that's certified in computer forensics, they can, if they work for a company, they can make over $100,000 to $150,000 a year. If they work for themselves, it pays $250 to $1,000 an hour, working for an attorney. That's just one discipline. There's several disciplines that we do that pay that well. It's a high demand.
I have a feeling that we're unable to pay it that
Absolutely, and we're not asking for that. I'm not asking for that. What I'm asking for is to stay where we're at, a P3 level, and build around it. Don't lower it to bring the people.
Bring people in.
Right. You know, basically, and I told the Lieutenant Colonel this yesterday. This plan we can implement today. The plan that's being presented, and with minimal money, we can fill those positions. It doesn't cost the state police any money because the people we're bringing into the unit are P1 already, so we're paying them that. And the only person that's going to get a bump is going to be the supervisor, which is only a 3% bump from senior TSO to supervisory TSO, and I don't know that that's worth the headache that supervisor's going to have to do. I mean, that's basically boils down to about $130 a check. You're only going to see about 80 of it, you know.
So what you're saying is that just it's not worth the headaches for someone that's already a trooper to transfer over to your unit at all.
I don't think so. No, sir. I don't think we're going to see the applicants.
Have there been any problems with recruitment in the unit now? Are there open positions that are not being
There's
filled?
open positions, but we haven't filled them in an effort to get the trainee positions defined and this career progression in place. We have seen some guys leave the unit and the state police to go on to civilian jobs. We've had 2 of those. One of them, well, actually both of them ended up coming back, not to the unit, but to the state police. And then one of them ended up leaving again, the state police. So we have seen people leave because of more money.
Trooper Parker, so are you saying that in your summation that you would like to see this reorganized, maintaining a P3 level for entry and then building on top of that?
No, sir. No, sir. The trainee would be, I would say, a P1 with premium pay. That would give us the ability that if they happen to not work out, they can transition back and they're only losing the premium pay. It's not a position where you would have to demote somebody.
Right. Is that in place now?
I believe so. I think that's how.
Mr. Crawford, could I interject real quick?
Sure.
Is that a common occurrence, or does that happen, where y'all have people come in and basically, for technical reasons or just whatever reason, it doesn't work out, so they...
We haven't seen it. The only reason I would say that could be is not because of their technical skill or their abilities. We see some horrible things. We look at child pornography on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not talking maybe child pornography. I'm telling you it is. No doubt in my mind. I've watched a trooper friend of mine get shot. We see horrible things. And I think we should be compensated in order, that would be a reason, somebody said, hey, I can't handle looking at child pornography. Sure. I think that would be a way to transition somebody out, you know, because we're gonna have to. But as far as, I think our overall, what we're looking for and the type of people we're looking for, it's kind of the cream of the crop type people. So as long as we do our selection properly, we don't have that problem. It's just something, maybe they couldn't handle it.
Thank you. Robert, I just wanted to, if that's the comment.
What's that? We certainly will give them the opportunity to do so, like without some specific questions. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Parker? I have a couple before we get started. So, right now, all of the technical support officers are senior, correct?
Senior in age or senior?
I would just say, with regards to longevity in the state police service, they are all within 20 to 22 years, I believe, approximately. With regards to the level, they are currently a technical support officer at a P3 level. The challenge is that there's only 6 levels in state police schedules as far as the rank structure. The TSO is currently equivalent to a lieutenant, which is a supervisory level position, of course. The plan, as proposed, would retain the P3 level, but retitle the current incumbents to senior officer. This allows us to build the underneath levels, the entry levels, to the trainee at a P1, a newly titled, a newly coded technical support officer at a P2, and then the senior level at the P3. Then the supervisor would come in at the 1 level higher at technical support officer supervisor. And that was the intention and what we discussed with the command staff on the proposal.
But when you first started in this, you were not at a P3, I take it.
No, sir, I wasn't.
Okay. And you came into this field.
I came in as a P2, a P1, getting premium pay at $250, which is equivalent to a P2. And then after a year, then I was made whole, or, promoted to
P3.
P3, correct.
And how long would it take under this proposal? Let's say we had his scenario, what would it be?
Well, I think the pay structure had changed since you moved into the position, I believe.
Yes, sir, it did.
So there's a larger gap between the two. But currently, again, the request was for a technical support officer trainee with 5 years of specialized experience.
5 years on the job, 1 year specialized.
1 year specialized experience. We discussed, again, the ability to recruit individuals that have an aptitude, someone that has an aptitude for computer science and the technical. Why would the administration want to limit someone that maybe just graduated from the academy? So the standard was the barrier to entry was made simply permanent status, which is again comparable to what you would see at the emergency services. This is a graduate of the State Police Training Academy with permanent status. And then you can move over.
So you eliminated the 5-year.
Eliminated the 5-year requirement, simply established permanent status. And so that individual, which would be a trooper, which we have troopers that stay at a trooper P1 level their entire career. They never move up to the supervisory rung. They get their longevity pay or their step increases, but they don't. You have individuals that don't necessarily move out of the rank of trooper for the duration of the career because they don't move up to the supervisory structure, to sergeant, lieutenant, captain. This would allow the administration to have a trooper at a P1 level, someone that's non-supervisory, move over to the trainee, and it was discussed that really to ascertain the knowledge and the competencies, the 24 months was what was discussed regarding the training to move up to the next level, which is a 10.5% increase to move up to the P2 level. And after 2 years as a trainee, you move up to the officer 2. Then after 3 years as a technical support officer, you would be eligible to be a senior officer. Based on your training and your competencies, you'd be eligible to move up, which is another 10.5% increase.
Let me ask a question, and if Mr. Parker has a response to your answer, then
Sure.
certainly want to hear that as well. So, if I'm understanding the way you're explaining it to us, there is some financial incentive for an individual to make that move because they are in a position now that they can move from a P1 to a P2 to a P3, whereas if they stayed outside of this special service, that would not be available.
Correct. The only way for an individual trooper at a P1 level to move up to a P2 in the traditional LSP series is to take the promotional exam, get a passing score for sergeant. After 5 years as an officer, apply for a supervisory position. After 2 years as a sergeant, they can take the promotional exam and apply to be a lieutenant at a P3 level.
And in this,
It accelerates them in the specialized series, and it allows them to be non-supervisory, and it eventually achieve the level of P3, equivalent to a lieutenant,
and without having to take the promotion.
and without having to take the promotional exam.
Is that a fair and accurate statement of how that works in your understanding?
In my understanding, yes, but at the point they go to P2, they could also, at that same time frame, they could go to a sergeant. So what's the incentive if they could go at the same time?
Unless I'm missing something that doesn't happen, because you could take someone straight out of the academy, they have permanent status, they could move into this position as a P1, and in 2 years, they could move to a P2.
Correct. It would take 5 years.
Right.
It would take 5 years to be eligible for a sergeant position.
They gotta be on the job a year. That's not a year?
Off probation. Yeah.
Okay. And then they have to be a trainee for 2 years.
At a P1 level, yes.
Right, at a P1 level,
And in the 3rd year, they could be a P2.
yes.
Whereas to be sergeant, to get that P2
Right.
level, they'd have to wait 5 years.
Correct.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to make
Right.
sure we're on the same page on what's, okay. That was all the questions I had. I don't know if anyone else had any. Okay, well, we'll hear from the administration as well.
Well, I'm prepared to answer questions, but I'll tell you the philosophy of the intent to create the structure was to pull in people with the aptitude to do the work to begin with, to give them an opportunity to come to a specialized function within state police and to dedicate themselves career long to that function with state police, and an opportunity to promote, ascend with pay. But to do that, we wanted to measure progress. We didn't want to bring somebody in, give them a pay raise to come over here without them demonstrating some proficiency or competency in that discipline, accomplishing the training necessary to do the job well. But once they do demonstrate that, the proficiency after going through the training, in 2 years, we acknowledge the benefit to the agency to keep them in that career track, and we offer them an advancement in 2 years. The same applies 3 years later. If they accomplish additional training and demonstrate continued proficiency, in 3 years they'd be eligible to move to the next level, which is paid at lieutenant's grade.
6 years into the service, they could be at a P3 level.
At a lieutenant level, yes, sir.
Without taking the promotional exam.
That's correct. Now, my discussions with JD yesterday, his main concern was the inability to attract young people into the position without giving them a pay incentive. I see it differently. I think it is an opportunity to move pretty much a guarantee through the organization and pay scale without competitive promotion. If they can demonstrate proficiency and passion to do that type of work. And if they're committed to that, this is an avenue for them to advance. I believe that is an incentive for a young person to come over into that service.
Question,
Commissioner.
because I'm just new to this, this commission. I'm trying to understand about the pay grades. When you look at the different pay grades, do you compare yourself to other states that have effective state police units, for instance, Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, there to see if they have technical units and what their pay rates are across the different states?
No, sir. The comparison of specialty series to my knowledge, are not compared to what's outside the state. What we do is compare it to our existing pay scale. And
How do our existing pay scales compare with other states?
well, I think we're pretty good on the southeast region right now. But everybody leapfrogs one another. It's just a matter of time, and we'll be lagging behind. But at this point, I think we're paid adequately.
I agree that this is a very specialized unit, and especially in today's society with all social media and everything going on, it seems like it's getting more and more social, more and more specialized in that area.
Right.
And that it, especially local sheriff's offices rely heavily, especially in rural areas, for the state police. And I imagine that there's heavy demand for this particular unit across the board in our state.
There definitely is, Mr. Knapp. The workload is tremendous. There's much more work to be done than we can adequately handle. We prioritize cases, violent crimes first, right? JD spoke about child pornography. It's a priority with us. So we're going to do everything we can to apply the resources to work those types of cases. But we will never have enough people to work all the cases that need to be worked out there. We do intend to create additional TSO spots to address that workload problem. But first things first, we had to provide a structure before we would ask for additional positions.
And you think this structure is adequate to attract young officers into this position?
I do. That does not prohibit us from coming back at some point in time when we identify, well, we really do have a problem attracting or retaining people. We can address those concerns at that point when they become a reality. Right now, I think it'd be premature to act on a hypothetical that maybe we'll have trouble attracting people or keeping them. We've not seen that, and as JD alluded to, even in the current structure, we've had a couple of people leave over the last few years. Very few people leave and stay gone. They want to come back into the police service. We dedicate our lives to this type of work, and there's a reason that we stay in the profession. It's not chasing a dollar. We don't make the kind of money you can make on the outside, but we have other benefits. And so I don't think it's a reality to be so concerned about attraction and retention at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Crawford.
Frank, let me ask you something. In my experience with civil service, when I had a firefighter leave operations and go into a division, training, EMS, communications, they lost money. FLSA, ability to work overtime.
Yes, sir.
Those types of things. And so we provided an incentive so they wouldn't at least lose that pay. And so when an individual on the new pay chart makes a decision that, hey, this is something I'd like to pursue after a year, and he's certified, I assume, is he going to lose any money in those, I guess, those additional qualitative things that, you know, his ability to work overtime, any extra pay that he would get as a trooper? Is he giving up something, days off, time off, those types of things? Because I saw that in my profession, so we always had to compensate for that. So is that the case when somebody goes into, I guess, this division or any other division? I mean, the last thing I would want to see as a commissioner is somebody volunteer to step up and take this position, where now they're getting some incentive to go in there, even though it takes them 5 years. But a young officer with 1 year, they're at the low end of the totem pole. They're trying to make ends meet with their family, and I'd hate for them to be giving up some pay or some overtime or some time off to help us out without us fairly compensating them.
The only variable in that scenario is overtime. We're not guaranteed overtime to begin with in any section. There's an abundance of opportunity to earn money for details, traffic enforcement. In uniform capacity, there's more money available to be made in uniform capacity than there is in a plainclothes capacity. We have a number of grants. We have federal grants for marijuana eradication. We have FBI Violent Crime Task Force, Fugitive Task Force, DEA, Narcotics Enforcement Task Force money that's provided by the feds to work different types of cases. We also have state overtime when it's available, okay? Right now, we're minimizing the accruement of overtime because we came into this fiscal year $7 million in the hole in budget for overtime. So the availability of state overtime would be the only thing that would adversely impact these guys, but they would not be prohibited from working other types of overtime. If we have overtime money available to pay any of our investigators, it would be made available to them too.
May I address that also?
I have a follow-up question to Commissioner Crawford.
Go ahead, because I have another question, so I'm going to follow up to that.
So someone that moves into technical support can still work in other areas to do the overtime?
They're not prohibited at this point. I don't know of a case where that's being done in a uniform capacity. Like, do you, Jade?
I can answer that. So that direct question from the Colonel to me, yes. I happen to work lace every once in a while, or once a week. And I've actually stopped doing that for personal reasons. But when you go from the road and you're working 12-hour shifts, basically working 15 days a month, and on your off days you have escorts, traffic details, lace, federal grants, the road has an abundance of overtime, whereas plainclothes does not. He is correct. We are compensated if we work over, if the money's available, but it's just not as easy to get it and work it into your schedule. When you're off 15 days a month, you know, you have several days a week, you can work overtime, you can plan it, whereas in our case, I may work, well, those guys, Randy worked till 9 or 10 last night, and two of our other guys. So, you know, our schedule varies because of the mission. You know, some of the things we do, we can't do in the daytime. We gotta go do it at night. So, like I said, if they can, they will compensate us, but it's not nearly as much as the road.
And that's pretty much what I was alluding to. When firefighters go from 24-hour shifts, they work 10 of those a month.
Yes, sir.
And so when they go to a division and they're working 8 to 5, it impacts their ability to work on the side or make some extra money. And especially, my concern is for the low-end guys that are going to be going into this position and actually giving up those additional days off, possibly overtime opportunities, the number of overtime opportunities. Not that they can't secure overtime working in the division themselves. And so that answers my question.
Thank you, Colonel. My second question is, if my math is right, and I'm a Caddo Parish graduate, so I'm hoping it is. So there'll be, if an officer gets certified, he has 1 year on, and then he has to serve 2 years at the P1 level. So at year 3, he attains a P2 status, correct? And then he can serve in that for 3 more years, which is 6 years total to be a P3 status, which is a lieutenant's, comparable to a lieutenant's rank. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so that's 6 years. How long would it take a trooper that was serving in a line capacity operations? How long would it take them to achieve a P3 status? Is it similar or is it different?
It's actually a year earlier than a uniform guy or somebody who doesn't take a specialized career path.
So
You have to have 5 years on the job to make sergeant and another 2 years in that capacity to compete for lieutenant.
So there's a little bit of an advantage there.
Yes,
They
it
get
is.
a year earlier.
Right.
And plus, isn't it also accurate that the moving up in the line capacity is competitive as opposed to just time? You have to take the promotional exam and you have to be selected as well. So there's no guarantees in that timeline if you're in the regular line.
That's correct, yes.
whereas there is a guarantee here.
As Mr. Hanneman pointed out, we've got people that retire from this job after a 30-year career as a trooper, not attaining any rank or supervisory rank.
Which leads me to my last question. Somebody stays in this division, like Mr. Parker, has been in this division for how long, John?
Since 2009, sir.
2009, and you went in the rank of?
I was a master trooper.
Okay.
It was an old pay scale, so, but it would have been equivalent to a master trooper P1
Okay.
now.
So if a member goes into the division, stays in for, let's say, 5 or 10 years, and he goes back to operations, and you move him back to operations, what does he go back as?
See, that's a tricky place, because if they elect to go back, they forfeit. I would have to defer to Mr. Hammond. I don't know how procedurally they would leave that specialized P level, okay, to go back into the ordinary rank. That's why we're trying to compensate them to stay in that career track.
But if somebody, I mean, I think we even had the conversation that Trooper Parker said, we've had some people come in the division and go out of the division, is that correct?
No, so that's not the case. I think he was.
I can clarify that.
Okay.
What I meant when I said it, we had people in the section, they left state police altogether, went and worked in the civilian sector. When they came back, they didn't come back to the TSOs. They came back to, one went to patrol and one is an investigator.
You never had somebody come in a probationary status for that 12 months and say, hey, this is not for me? I mean, you alluded to some of the horrible things that they have to look at, and
They go back into operations,
Not not in my time.
That's not been the case, although maybe it should have.
well,
Should have been.
I think it brings up an important question, though.
is I think there's gotta be an exit strategy. And if that has to be built into this plan, that's something that you may have to look at it from a management perspective and bring back to the commission at that time, because certainly burnout could be a possibility. And if an officer or a trooper has given 5-10 years of his career to serve the state and serve the state police, I think, and they said, hey, Colonel, I've had enough. I really want to go back to operations. I think there has to be a place for them to go. And I think there has to be a strategy and a policy for them to go back without, you know.
I agree completely, and I think that applies to all our specialty career tracks. We've got 3 or 4 in existence right now, and there's not a clear path out of those tracks right now.
And just from my perspective and my experience, and
You know, being the fire chief and spending 27 years, we had that situation where somebody would go into a training, for instance, and they did it for 5 or 6 years and said, hey, you know what, I don't want to be a training officer anymore, I want to go back to operations, I miss it for whatever reason, or you know, people have their personal reasons. They always had to go back to the rank they left at.
That's correct. Yes.
And so, but I think herein, that has to be clearly defined to the trooper, so they know the risk, or, you know, what the situation is. Trooper, if you take this assignment and you're in here for so many years, you know going in, you go back, this is what's gonna happen to you. So I think we have to make that clear to them, whatever it is, whatever management decides on, so.
Commissioner Crawford,
Yeah.
there is a provision in chapter 6 of the rules, 6.10 B, voluntary demotion. So essentially what would happen is if someone wants to go back to the regular trooper level versus being in the equivalent to a lieutenant level, when an employee takes a voluntary demotion, their rate of pay shall be set representing his or her service tenure, so your years of service, as applicable for the pay level assigned to the grade for which his or her position is allocated, along with any performance adjustments that have been accrued. So in this case, if someone was a 10-year and a P3, a senior technical support officer, they chose to go back to the ranks, they would go from let's just again say 10 years. Let's say $81,000, which is the 10-year P3 level, to $66,000, which is the 10-year P1 level. So the provisions are provided for in Chapter 6, but we can certainly, again, as Lieutenant Colonel White commented earlier, if issues start to present themselves, if issues start to, with regards to recruitment, there is capacity to come back and revisit the series.
that's all I have.
Any other questions? Any other Just one second. So, I'd ask the executive director, obviously you're not in a position to make a motion, but if one of the commissioners were inclined, what motion would it be that you would have us make?
Well, certainly. Now, exhibits A and B in the plan merely require your approval to go into effect. However, it is tied in concept to exhibit C, which requires the governor's approval to implement. Therefore, should the commissioners approve exhibits A, B, and C as presented in General Circular 196, I would recommend making the effective date of all exhibits contingent on the governor's approval of exhibit C, and effective no sooner than 10 days after the date of gubernatorial approval.
I so move.
You have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to offer an amendment to,
Are we doing all three of these at the same time?
It's
I'd like to make an amendment to all three, and I'm not sure exactly where it would go in. And that is that the P1 level maintain the $200 incentive pay for officers to transcend from the trooper position to, so everything stays the same, but they would retain the $200 incentive pay.
Was it 200 or 250?
It was 250.
Okay, I'm
250.
sorry. So the 250 would stay the same for the probationary employee for those 24 months.
And Commissioner Conrad, I will need to review the approval that was done. I know that was based on the prior pay grid, not the one that was implemented in 2015. And I'm not sure if that's in practice how it is maintained at this point.
We haven't got anybody since then, have we?
So I would recommend we approve the plan as proposed with the ability to research and see if that is actually in existence at this point.
Well, maybe better than that, unless there's some urgent need to do this today. Is there an urgent need to do this today? Then let's do that work and then bring this back to the commission.
Because I was unaware of the way it was initially proposed as far as a premium pay. My understanding is that at the current moment, premium pay is only used when someone is detailed to a protective services schedule or something where they do not meet the minimum qualification for sergeant rank, but they're in lieu of detail, they receive a temporary premium pay. That's my understanding with the HR director when I was looking into premium pay options.
But I thought I heard the conversation earlier was that they come in as a P1, if that's what their level is as a trooper. They get $200 extra during that, $250 during that time until they are promoted to the P3 rank. Is that?
That's correct. But that hasn't happened since the new pay grid came out.
So I'm unaware of how the previous pay grid versus the current pay grid, and since there was never a P1 or P2 level, it was only a P3 TSO because it was a singular series. There was never a.
I think my dilemma is, I think when you have a young officer that's a P1, and he's trying to make a decision, and he sits down with his family and says, hey, I'm gonna take this other position, I'm potentially gonna lose money for the next 24 months, just based on time that's available for other options and working overtime. I just don't wanna see them lose any money, and I
Understand the concern. We have, I have 400 folks into the criminal program. This is the only specialized series except polygraphist. We've got 2 in the state right now, polygraphist. That get an immediate pay raise for doing so. So detectives, narcotics, insurance fraud investigators, they all come off the road with that capability of earning all that money. But I've never had a problem filling the vacancies. It's never been a detraction for them not to earn that money. to prohibit them from coming into the Bureau. There's always been adequate response and interest in the Bureau. I think the same is true for the TSO position. I think the promise that in 2 years I can advance to a sergeant level is incentive.
But is there, in your opinion, is there an urgent need for us to decide this at this meeting, or can this be deferred until the next meeting without creating a problem to at least allow the review of that information?
No, sir, it's not a showstopper. We have been holding a vacancy for roughly a year.
One more month on her.
No, sir, I guess so.
I'll withdraw my motion. With his withdrawal, I'll make a motion to table this for 30 days.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we request that y'all go back, do the research on this particular issue, and report back at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you.